Howdy y'all, Andy here, and welcome to another episode of King's Comics. And today we've got a special episode. I don't do too many comics, which is funny enough, but especially not manga. So I decided to draw in someone who could help me out a little bit, and please welcome Chris from
The Review Cave.
And Chris is actually a lot better versed in manga and anime than I am, so this will be a real treat. That being said, y'all, let's go ahead and tear in. Chris, what are we reviewing today?
Well, today we're going to be looking at the Death Note one-shot that came out a couple of weeks ago.
Right, and it's kind of interesting because not a lot of people realize that Death Note was... A lot of people know the Death Note anime, but not a lot of people know that Death Note was based on a manga, which, I mean, once again, the manga was insanely popular too, but most people are aware of the anime from watching it on Adult Swim or whatnot.
Yeah, the funny thing is that I actually mentioned this in a review video when I was talking about the Demon Slayer anime. When the Death Note anime came out, the manga actually outsold One Piece for a year. Yeah,
really?
I found that out most recently.
So that I didn't actually know. I gotta admit, I hadn't done my homework on that, but I did. I mean, I know that like Demon Slayer right now, I think either oversold One Piece and I think My Hero Academia.
I mean, it wasn't that big of a manga when it originally came out, but when the anime was released, a lot of people went back to read the manga, and the sales just skyrocketed. So having a good anime adaptation really helps with the sales of the actual comic.
Yeah, and actually that does remind me, since today we're going over the Death Note one-shot, it was originally by, and dude, please either forgive me or correct me if I butcher these names, but it was originally written by Tsugumi Ohba and Takeshi Obata, and I mean, those two were incredible. They worked on Bakuman, I think it's called, together, as well as Platinum End, but Death Note is kind of the big one they've worked on together.
Yeah, I think that was like their original concept. They did the Bakuno one right after Death Note was finished, so I do believe that they wanted to do something different after Death Note.
That kind of goes into what I liked about the one-shot is, and guys, we probably should have let off by saying that this is a non-spoiler review. I think we agreed that we'd go into kind of spoiling the original anime and the original manga because those details carry over into the one-shot, right?
Yeah, because you really do have to understand the original source material to understand the one-shot, since it's kind of a continuation.
What was nice is that the original creative team of Ohba and Obata did return, which is kind of like how we were saying, you know, like the animation studios might change for anime, is having the original writer and creator really helps. And I think it adhered really strongly to the foundation of the series. It didn't feel like it was changing up anything too much. You know, it felt like it was just right inside the same world.
Yeah, and I do enjoy the constant references to the past and how Ryuk shows up being the one to give the Death Note to the new person at this point. Since originally Ryuk just dropped the Death Note out of nowhere to see who would pick it up. This time, I believe he was actually searching for someone that could use the Death Note as well as Light did.
And I think that's what is also interesting, is because the main character we're introduced to, the new guy, Minoru Tanaka, I think, is like it pretty much flat out says he's pretty smart, but not as smart as Light. You know, it's not trying to like set him up to be the smartest guy in the world like a Light or L was.
Yeah, I mean, the way things go about in this one shot is honestly kind of interesting, and I honestly do like how they were going through it.
And I guess, yeah, just as like a brief summary of how the one shot like starts off is, yeah, to your point, we find Ryuk approaching Minoru Tanaka, right? And he gives the Death Note to Minoru, but it's revealed that Minoru can see Ryuk as soon as he touches the Death Note, but it's also revealed that he knew Ryuk previously, that like for some reason he had seen Ryuk already and had contact with the Death Note before. And then from there we kind of go into the core events that I don't want to spoil too much of.
Yeah, and we didn't even take into account that from the last series, Ryuk's own actions were essentially just he wanted to stop his own boredom. He doesn't really interfere with anything at all. He just stays there, watches stuff, eats apples, and basically slightly gives hints to what's going on around him, especially since no one else can see him.
Yeah, and that's something that there is no character change in Ryuk, which is really important. Like, the events of the main Death Note series didn't like change him or make him more wholesome or anything. He's still very much like kind of this not even evil, right? He's like just neutral in that he's just pursuing his own interests, I would say.
Yeah, the way they go about like the guy getting the Death Note is an interesting way of doing things because it's basically like a normal person's way of reacting to being like, given this weird thing where you can kill anyone just by writing their name and face and having it in their head, and they're not like a super genius like Light, and they don't have a god complex as well.
That's pretty critical because like the way Minoru and Ryuk's interactions also differ from him and Light a little bit because of the fact that his actions seem to confuse Ryuk a little bit more because of the fact that Light objectively like had this large scale plan, and then while Minoru gets there, it's not like the same route that Light decides to go. So those were pretty much the things that we liked about it, right? Is I like the plot, I like the characters, I like that we get to see. Well, I'm not gonna spoil, but we get to see characters from the original series show back up.
Yeah, and it was also kind of pretty faithful with, like you said, with the tone of the series and how they tend to do things, and the returning characters. It was a nice way of like paying homage to one of the shonen hits of the 2010s.
So I guess it seems like we liked it overall. So let's kind of go into our. I know. Was there anything you can think that you like disliked about it? Let's tear it apart. I feel like I might have one or two gripes, but what did you dislike about it, if anything?
Well, the only thing I really do dislike I wouldn't really call it a dislike, more like a bit of a nitpick, was that they kind of dragged out the specific actions that he took with the Death Note a little too long, like a few pages. I feel like they could have like shortened like maybe by like 10 pages if anything for the one shot, because I do feel like it was kind of dragged out a little bit.
That's fair. I think I've got mixed feelings about, once again, like obviously not in detail, but like how did you feel about the way it ended? Because that was a huge curveball.
Yeah, that I was not expecting. Like the ending was honestly a real shock to I think like everybody that read the one shot. Like it was something that they never really expected, because I believe it was probably something like unique for this series. Maybe like what happened was a direct influence from the original, so specific things wouldn't happen or spiral out of control with the Death Notes and everything. So with that, I'm kind of on the fence with how it ended, but either way I'm still kind of satisfied that it ended the way it did, because it does feel like Death Note in a way, and it does kind of mirror the ending of the original.
And I'll give it that too, is I think the big thing is Ryuk is such an interesting character, as are like just Shinigami in the few interactions we get, because Ryuk comes off as a little bit of a jokester sometimes, and as like a little bit goofy to some extent, but so that makes it hard to consistently keep in mind that, he's still pretty much a devil. He makes a deal, there are consequences for interacting with the Death Note. I agree with you 100%, where I've got mixed feelings. I think it was also true to the tone of the original Death Note, and didn't at all, I wouldn't say it failed. I wouldn't say it failed me in my view of the one shot and liking it, but I think it did like fail my expectations a little bit as we got closer to the end.
Yeah, same here. I don't really have any real objective opinions or negative things to say about it. Plus, there is possibilities of them like bringing more one shots like later down the road. I mean, with how the original Death Note ended, you didn't think it was going to continue like at all, or have a one shot of all things with how it ended, but they brought out the one shot, so I wouldn't be too surprised if like a few years down the road, if they feel up for it, they could make another one shot.
Yeah, that's very true. That being said, y'all, thanks for tuning in to another episode of King's Comics with
Chris from the Review Cave.
That's right. So I'll have his link down below in the comments, y'all, but please check out my man Chris if you want some dope anime and comic reviews. And thanks. If you guys enjoyed today's video, please feel free to like. If you really liked today's video, please feel free to subscribe. And if you want to continue this discussion, if you got any comments or feedback, please drop a line down below. We'd love to hear what you have to say. Maybe we do a spoiler review or something just to discuss like a lot more in depth. I don't know, but at the very least, I think we said we're gonna probably review the the My Hero Academia movie.
Yeah, I am looking forward to that movie. Honestly, a lot of people are saying that it makes the previous one look like a dog turd.
Really? Oh dang. Well, rock and roll. Yeah, I can't wait to see it then and hear your thoughts on it too. With that being said, y'all, once again, thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll be talking to y'all again real soon.